Why does your Chihuahua shake like that and make your heart drop in 1 second? Most owners see those tiny trembles and immediately think the same thing. My dog is scared. Maybe scared of the room, scared of the noise, or even scared of me. And honestly, that fear hits hard, because when you love a Chihuahua, you notice everything. Their body is so small, so expressive, so easy to worry about, that one little shake can feel bigger than it really is. But here is the part most owners get wrong. A shaking Chihuahua is not always giving you a fear signal. In this breed, that trembling can mean much more than anxiety, and that is exactly why so many loving owners misread it at first. Chihuahuas are built in a way that makes every internal shift easier to see. A little burst of cold, a little surge of energy, a little spike of emotion. All of it shows up fast in a body this tiny. What might stay invisible in a larger dog becomes obvious in a Chihuahua, so the shaking looks dramatic, even when the meaning behind it is not as frightening as you think. That is why this behavior should not always feel like a verdict on your bond. Sometimes it is not a sign that you are failing your dog at all. Sometimes it is simply the loudest language a tiny body has. And one of the most common times your Chihuahua shakes may actually have nothing to do with fear. In fact, it can come from something surprisingly positive. But before that makes sense, you need to understand the tiny body truth first. 1. The tiny body truth. A lot of people grow up hearing the same thing about Chihuahuas. They shake because they are nervous. They shake because they are dramatic. They shake because that is just how this breed acts. But that explanation is usually too shallow for what is really happening. In many cases, a Chihuahua is not shaking because of personality at all. They are shaking because of physiology. Their body is tiny, fast, sensitive, and built in a way that makes ordinary physical changes much more visible than they would be in a bigger dog. What looks exaggerated to us may be completely normal bodywork for them. That matters, because once you understand this, a lot of guilt starts to loosen. Chihuahuas lose body heat faster than larger dogs. They have less body fat, less insulation, and often a thinner coat. Their bodies also have a higher surface area compared to their size, which means cold reaches them quickly and shows up fast. Add in their naturally quick metabolism, and suddenly that little shiver looks less like emotional instability, and more like a small dog trying to regulate itself. In other words, sometimes your Chihuahua is not panicking. Sometimes their body is just doing exactly what a tiny body has to do. That is why a Chihuahua can start trembling in a room that feels fine to you. What feels mildly cool in a house, near a tile floor, near a door, or during a morning walk can hit them much harder than it hits us. And because this breed came from a warmer climate and is not built like a thick-coated northern dog, that sensitivity can show up again and again throughout life. This is where owners often judge the behavior too harshly. They think the dog is weak, fragile, spoiled, or overly dramatic. But cold sensitivity is not attitude. It is not bad temperament, and it is not your Chihuahua trying to manipulate you. It is often just biology showing itself in a very visible way. Now, that does not mean every shaking episode is solved by a sweater or a blanket. That would be too simple, and sometimes too dismissive. Warmth helps many Chihuahuas, but not all shaking comes from being cold. That is the important nuance. You do not want to panic every time they tremble, but you also do not want to reduce every tremble to one cause just because it is a common one. Still, this thing matters because it changes the emotional frame. Your Chihuahua is not always a nervous little mess. Very often, they are simply a tiny living creature whose body reveals everything faster, and once you stop seeing that as drama, the next truth becomes even more surprising. Because sometimes the exact same shake that scares owners the most is not fear at all. Sometimes it is pure happiness trying to fit inside a 4-pound body. 2. When the shake means joy. This may be the most comforting truth in the whole video. If your Chihuahua starts trembling the second you come home, reach for the leash, open the treat drawer, or scoop them into your arms, your first instinct may be to worry. You see the shake and think anxiety. You think fear. You think maybe my dog is overwhelmed. But sometimes that trembling is not a stress signal at all. Sometimes it is happiness moving through a body too small to hold it quietly. That is what makes Chihuahuas so easy to misread. excitement, cold, and fear can all create a very similar outward signal. The shake may look the same for a moment, but the meaning changes when you look at the whole dog, not just the trembling. Bright eyes, eager movement, forward posture, quick recovery, and leaning into you often suggests something very different from distress. In a Chihuahua, big emotion shows up fast. They are tiny, alert, deeply attached, and often intensely tuned into the people they love most. So when something wonderful is about to happen, that emotion can overflow into the body almost instantly. What looks alarming to you may actually be anticipation, attachment, and pure joy arriving all at once. And that reframe matters, because sometimes the shake is not your dog pulling away from you. It is your dog struggling to contain how much they want to be with you. The trembling often fades once the moment settles, which is one reason context matters so much more than guessing from the shake alone. So if this is helping you understand your Chihuahua in a deeper way, subscribe, like, and share this with another Chihuahua owner who worries about the shakes too. The more we understand these tiny signals, the better we can love these tiny hearts. But relief still needs wisdom, because some shakes are joyful and some are asking for help. 3. The shake you never ignore. This is where reassurance needs a little discipline, because once Chihuahua owners learn that shaking can be normal, it becomes very easy to explain too much away. You start telling yourself it is just excitement, just cold, just one of those Chihuahua things. But that is not always true. The same shaking that can mean joy or body temperature can also mean hunger, pain, nausea, weakness, or illness. And with a Chihuahua, that matters more than many people realize, because tiny bodies do not always give you a long warning window before something small becomes something serious. One of the biggest examples is low blood sugar. In toy breeds, missed meals or irregular feeding can hit harder and faster than owners expect. A Chihuahua may look lively one minute, then shaky, weak, or strangely quiet the next. That is why routine matters so much with this breed. Feeding is not just part of the day. For some Chihuahuas, it is part of staying physically steady, and hunger is only one possibility. Pain can cause shaking too. So can nausea. So can an injury or illness that is still subtle. That is what makes this tricky. Some owners dismiss the shaking because their dog still has little bursts of energy, still follows them around, or still acts mostly normal. But a Chihuahua can be uncomfortable and still try to stay close. So here is the safer filter. If the shaking is brief and clearly linked to something like cold, excitement, or a delayed meal that resolves quickly, that is one thing. But if it keeps happening, starts suddenly, or comes with lethargy, vomiting, limping, weakness, collapse, or seizure-like signs, that needs veterinary attention. That does not mean you jump to the scariest explanation first. Serious neurological causes can happen, but they are not the default story. The mistake is not staying calm. The mistake is assuming every shake is harmless. Because loving a Chihuahua is not just about soothing the cute moments. It is about recognizing when that same tiny signal means their body needs help. And once you know what not to ignore, the next step becomes much more powerful. You stop reacting to the shake alone and start reading the whole moment around it. 4. Read the moment, not the myth. This is the point where a lot of Chihuahua owners finally breathe a little easier, because the truth is, you do not need one dramatic answer for every shake. You need context. That is where most confusion begins. People go online looking for one fixed meaning, as if trembling always points to the same emotion. But with Chihuahuas, the same shake can mean very different things in very different moments. Under a blanket beside the front door, near the food bowl, after a missed meal, during cuddle time, or when they hear your keys, the body may look similar while the meaning changes completely. So instead of asking only, "Why is my Chihuahua shaking?" ask, "What is happening around the shake? Is the room cool? Did they just wake up? Have they eaten recently? Are they leaning towards something they love? Or pulling away from something they fear? Do they brighten and settle quickly, or stay tense and off for longer than normal?" Those small details matter more than the shaking alone. This is where care becomes less reactive and more connected. Because understanding your Chihuahua is not about memorizing internet myths. It is about noticing patterns. Maybe your dog trembles on cold mornings, but stops once warmed. Maybe they shake at the leash because they are thrilled. Maybe they seem off when meals are late. Maybe one type of trembling feels different from the others, and that difference is worth paying attention to. That kind of noticing is not overthinking. It is love with better eyes. And it also protects you from two common mistakes. One is dismissing every shake as normal. The other is treating every shake like an emergency. A real care usually lives in the middle. You soothe, you feed well, you keep them warm, you watch their body language, you notice what repeats, and you remember that every Chihuahua is still an individual. Once you stop treating the shake like a random quirk, something deeper starts to happen. It no longer feels like noise. It starts to feel like communication. 5. What your Chihuahua is really asking from you. By the time you understand all of this, the shaking stops feeling like one simple problem you need to fix. It starts feeling like a message. That may be the deepest shift in this whole conversation, because a lot of owners carry quiet guilt around this breed. They see the trembling and think, my dog is always scared, my dog is too fragile, I must be doing something wrong. But most of the time, your Chihuahua is not grading your love every time that little body shakes. They are communicating the only way a tiny sensitive body knows how. Sometimes the message is cold, sometimes it is hunger, sometimes it is excitement so big it spills over, sometimes it is discomfort, weakness, or a sign that something needs attention. But in every version, the meaning is deeper than the old stereotype. This is not just a quirky habit, it is information, and that matters, because Chihuahuas make both survival signals and attachment signals very visible. In a bigger dog, some of these tiny shifts might barely register. In a Chihuahua, they show up immediately. That is why people so often confuse emotional closeness with emotional damage. They think, my dog is broken, when sometimes the truth is much more tender than that. Your Chihuahua may simply feel everything in a body too small to hide it. So the goal is not to panic at every shake, and it is not to dismiss every shake either. The goal is to become the kind of owner who notices, the one who learns the difference between cold and fear, between joy and weakness, between a moment that passes and a moment that needs help. Because the better you read this signal, the safer your Chihuahua feels with you, the more understood they feel, the more your care starts matching what their body is actually asking for. And maybe that is the part most owners need to hear most. The shake is not always fear. Sometimes it is a quiet little body saying, I am cold, I am excited, I need something, stay close, notice me. If this helped you understand your Chihuahua a little more deeply, subscribe, like, and share. And if your Chi has a shaking habit that once worried you, tell me in the comments what you realized it really meant.